Okay, we're back and we are hitting the story of Joseph. We are picking back up. So yes, yes, and yes. Today we're hitting Genesis chapter 39 and 40. So awesome, awesome. 2 chapters for you to read. Go for it. Just jump into those chapters. Read that. Yes, the story of Joseph. So much goodness. If you need to go back and just refresh on how this all started, Genesis 37 talks about this foundation laid of Joseph being sold by his brothers. So they were sold to Ishmaelites. They took Joseph down to Egypt and sold him there to Potiphar. So if you need to go back, Genesis 37 to just refresh on what's going on. If not, and you feel like you have a good grip, then let's get this thing started. I want to encourage you right away. These chapters, Genesis 39, Genesis 40. So good. There's so much in the story of Joseph. I don't want you to miss it. It holds so much power, so much truth, so much of who God is and how he is so faithful, never leaving never leaving Joseph's side. I'm getting all out of sorts because I'm so excited. Okay, you do that, read through, be intentional, take your time, don't rush through. You and God, God and you, make it happen, and then meet back up with me in just a second. Okay, let's do this. Father, Lord, thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness, just reading through this story and just seeing how faithful you are, seeing how you provide, seeing how your hand is all over Joseph's life. You are all over protecting, providing, caring for. Lord, thank you. Thank you for showing us that's not just you towards Joseph, but that's you toward us. Lord, you love us deeply. You love Joseph deeply. Thank you for your love. Thank you for never, ever giving up on us and giving us every reason in the world to push through, to persevere, even when times look rough and like there's no hope. Thank you for being our hope. Thank you for what you teach us in the story of Joseph. Meet with us, teach us, speak to us. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. Thinking back, I hope I've been saying Joseph and not Jacob. Gets so confusing. So if I said Jacob, please don't be confused. I meant Joseph. We're in the story of Joseph, talking about Joseph. Here we go. So Genesis chapter 39, it says, "Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there." Then right away in verse 2, we see the message of this chapter, of this story, of all of the story of Joseph. It says, the Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph. Point blank. We will read that several times throughout the story. Don't just read over it like it's no big deal. Oh yeah, God was with him. No, the Lord was with Joseph in everything, in every detail, in everything. The Lord was with Joseph. So he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and how the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. So the favor of the Lord is just upon Joseph, because we read the Lord was with Joseph. Now, he was in charge of the house of his master, so he had everything. And we read in the next few verses, we see that everything. Potiphar was growing in favor and success and wealth. Everything that Joseph was put in charge of, everything that he was taking care of, it went so well. I mean, he was prosperous in everything that he did, and it looked good. And his master was very quick to notice this. He saw it. Potiphar saw it, acknowledged it, recognized that everything he did, everything he put his hand to, that he was successful. The Lord was truly with him, and everyone around him could see this. Then it jumps in the end of verse 6. It says, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. So it said in verse 6, verse 6 is explaining that Potiphar didn't concern himself with anything that Joseph had touched or was in charge of. Nothing, because everything he touched, it was going well. So nothing, he didn't have any concern, trusted Joseph completely, fully. Then it says, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Jumps right into that. Then in verse 7, it came about after these events that his master's wife looked with desire at Joseph, and she said, lie with me. So this woman, his master's wife, Potiphar's wife, is being super seductive, literally inviting this handsome man, Joseph, inviting him in to her seductions, inviting him in to sexual pleasures. She is not holding back with her seduction. She is not. She is tempting him over and over again. And we see this, that Joseph continues to refuse her and says, no, why would I do this thing? My master has given me authority, power over everything in his house. Like, why would I do this? There's no way. The only thing he's holding back from me is you. Why would I do this? It says in verse 9, how then could I do this great evil and sin against God? His focus is even on everything I do. You know, this is for God, and I'm not going to sin against God by doing this selfish thing, by doing this thing and falling into temptation and giving in to what you are offering me when I know it's not right. He continued to refuse. In verse 10, it says, as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he did not listen to her to lie beside her or be with her. And guys, this is the wife of Potiphar, like head guy. We have Pharaoh, and then we have Potiphar, Potiphar's wife. She had to have been this beautiful woman who was coming on to Joseph, coming on to him and was offering her entire self to him. That's, guys, this is huge. I mean, this is what the world does. The world throws itself at us in this lust and with pornography and all of these sexual cravings and these sexual desires that we're being constantly exposed to. You know, our husbands, our sons, even our daughters, even us as women, like, it's everywhere. Sex is everywhere, thrown at us. And we see this. We see that this woman, this beautiful woman, is throwing herself at Joseph, and he continues to say, no, I'm not going to sin against God. No, I refuse. No, I'm not going to. No, no, no. He did not listen to her. No, he's not listening to sin. He's not listening to the voices of the world. He is saying no. He's refusing. He's denying himself any of this sexual pleasure. He's denying his flesh what this is. He's focused on pleasing the Lord and not sinning against God. Then it said in verse 12, in verse 11, now it happened one day that when he went into the house to do his work, none of the men of the household was there inside. She caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. So she grabs a hold of him and again says, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. Get this. Do not miss this. There comes a time in our lives where we can't just stick around and keep saying no to sin. There comes a time when we have to turn and run for our lives, no matter how it makes us look, no matter what people say about us. Because here's the thing, Joseph ran. She kept coming at him with all these temptations, with throwing herself at him. And he kept saying, no, 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 no. And she would not listen. The enemy is so persistent on getting us. We can say no one day and he's right back at us again. We have to continually say no, but there comes a time when no isn't good enough and you need to run for your life. He says no. He runs, and it makes him look really bad because she gets so mad at being and feeling rejected after being vulnerable and throwing herself sexually at him. He says no, runs away. And then she comes up with this lie and then says that, hey, he came in here and tried to rape me. This is what he did to me. So she was denied. She was rejected. And instead of sitting there in her embarrassment, she comes up with a lie and accuses now Joseph. Joseph wasn't concerned about being accused. Joseph wasn't concerned about what it would make him look. He knew what was right and wrong, and he made a decision, a clear-cut decision in confidence, knowing that he was not going to sin against God, and he ran away from sin. He didn't sit there and continually say no. He did that after after so long, he knew that this wasn't going to stop, and he needed to do something differently. He needed to run. So then it gets back. She speaks to these guys. She leaves his garment next to her. And when Potiphar then gets home, her husband, she shares the same story and says, look what this Hebrew slave did to me. Look what he did. He threw himself and then he left his garment here, and I screamed. I screamed for my life because he wouldn't stop and he wouldn't do this and that. Then it says, her master heard the words of her wife in verse 19. In verse 20. So Joseph's master took him and put him into jail. It says that his anger burned. In verse 19, it says that. So Joseph, is thrown into jail. Guys, how many of us would, when that would happen, be completely ticked off? Be completely in this state where we're like, you know what? If this is what I get for serving the Lord, for following the Lord, for doing what's right, then I don't want it. How many of us would have just thrown the towel in and said, I don't deserve this. This isn't fair. This is, I'm not happy. This isn't, all the stuff that we claim. All the stuff. Joseph remained focused though. Joseph didn't get so focused on just this injustice that was done to him. I mean, he stayed true. He stayed faithful to the Lord. He was doing what was right. He was doing what was right and respecting and honoring Potiphar, his master. Yet then his wife lied to him, and now his master is throwing him in jail, thinking that he disrespected him. Guys, he is accused of something that he did not do. Not only something that he did not do, but the exact opposite of what he did. He went out of his way to show respect and then was accused of being disrespectful. How many of us would just lose our cool at that if we were accused of that? If this injustice was poured upon us? And it's not only that Potiphar got mad, but Joseph is thrown into jail for this. Like, do we get this? This isn't just some slap on the wrist. He is being punished. He's being thrown into jail for something that he did not do, something that he did everything to prevent, and not in just not having bad things happen to him, but just out of the pureness of his heart and out of the respect that he was showing for his master, and in respect for his God, and saying that he was not going to sin against his God. So he does the right thing, yet he gets thrown in jail. Then it says, verse 21, here's their message again. But the Lord was with Joseph. It says in verse 20, he was put in jail. He was thrown into jail and confined where the king's prisoners were. But then verse 21, the Lord was with Joseph. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. Then in verse 22, the chief jailer committed to Joseph's charge all the prisoners who were in the jail, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for. The chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made to prosper. So again, we see this. The Lord was with him. The favor of the Lord was on Joseph. So everything Joseph was in charge of, he was successful in. He was prosperous in. And the jailer saw it. Guys, when we don't get angry and upset on, oh, this isn't fair and this shouldn't happen, and being caught up in complaining and blaming everyone else for everything. This was not Joseph's fault, but he wasn't pointing fingers. You don't hear him complain and say, she lied, this isn't fair, and I did this and I did that and I did this right. We don't see that. Joseph didn't do that. He wasn't focused on complaining. He was focused on the Lord being with him. He was focused on where the Lord was placing him, where he was to go next. The Lord had a plan. The Lord saw Joseph's heart and knew that he wasn't one to complain, that he was one that wanted to remain in the right, standing on righteous, pleasing the Lord, not sinning against him. The Lord saw that. And so he is now positioning Joseph where he can make a difference. And he shows favor. He allows Joseph to prosper in everything and in everywhere that he goes. The Lord was with him, and the Lord had a plan for Joseph's life. So then in chapter 40, we continue in and we talk about this cupbearer and the baker. So these are two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker who worked for Pharaoh. They did something wrong that ticked Pharaoh off, and they were put into jail where Joseph was. So, shocker, shocker, this is what the Lord does. If Joseph would have been so consumed with this injustice done to him, with him being thrown into prison when he did nothing wrong, if he would have been so focused on that, then he would have missed the way that God was connecting him with this cupbearer and the baker, and being able to just do what God has called him to do and to use the gifts that he's given him. So we have these two officials, and they are put into jail. It says that the captain of the bodyguard, put Joseph in charge of them. We see that in verse 4, and he took care of them. So then one day, we see further on in, in verse 6, when Joseph came to them in the morning and observed them, behold, they were dejected. He asked Pharaoh's officials, so he comes up to the cupbearer and the baker, and he says, why are your faces so sad today? And they let him know. They said, we had a dream. We both had a dream, and we don't know how to interpret it. We don't know what this means. Then Joseph said, we see this in verse 8, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell it to me, please. So he's saying, look, God knows how to interpret your dreams. God knows what this means. Why don't you tell it to me? He knows where he stands with the Lord. Joseph knew where he was at, that he was connected, that he was living a life that showed that he had the favor of God on his life. He was living a life where it was so evident that the Lord was with him. He was connected, so he didn't hesitate and said, guys, interpretations belong to God. Go ahead and tell it to me. Let's do this. Let's make this happen. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. So he lays all this out, that he's holding the cup. He squeezes the grapes in Pharaoh's cup. And he's like, so what does this mean? Then it says, let's see how Joseph, in verse 12, then Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches, so there were 3 branches in the beginning of this dream. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore to you to your office, and you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand according to your former custom when you were his cupbearer. So he is saying, okay, yeah, here's the interpretation. Your dream means that in 3 days, Pharaoh's going to give you back your job, and you're going to do the same thing you were before. Then he says right after that, we see this in verse 14, he says, only keep me in mind. Bring my name up. Tell Pharaoh about me. Tell him that I am here. Tell him who I am. Tell him that I did interpret this dream through God, and just speak my name. Remember me. Then in verse 16, it says that the baker was like, oh, well, he gave him a good interpretation, so let's tell him my dream. He lays out his dream. Joseph interprets this dream, yet this interpretation was not so hot. So there were three baskets in this dream, and he says on this one, though, that in 3 days, Pharaoh will come get him, take him out of jail, yet hang him, and the birds will eat the flesh off of his body. So very different from the cupbearer. Very, very different. Just different. And then we see that in 3 days, both of those things happen. So we see what God is capable of, that he can interpret dreams, that it is for real, that he sees, that he knows, that he is Lord. And we see the power of the Lord being with Joseph and using him. And again, if Joseph would have been so consumed with just what was done to him, with this not being fair, what was done to him, that he was thrown in jail for this thing that he did not do, if he would have been focused, he would have missed out on this opportunity. Joseph remained willing to be used by God, even in his time of imprisonment. He used what God has given him in this interpretation and being connected to God, and God gave him this gift of interpreting dreams because he was connected with the Lord. He is using his God-given gifts confidently, even in the middle of these trials, even in the middle of something that was done to him that was not fair. And Joseph wasn't focused on that, though. He was focused on how God could use him, on how God wanted to teach him, on how God wanted to grow him, on what God wanted to do in his life. So that finishes up that chapter. With that, be encouraged. Be absolutely encouraged that no matter what is done to you, may we not focus on complaining about it not being fair, or just weeping and saying, well, this isn't, I'm not happy and I want out of this, and this was done to me, and if they wouldn't have done that, and they shouldn't have said that, and whatever it is. Let's not get stuck in there. Instead of that, let's allow God to do something in our situation. Let's trust him. Let's trust and actually believe that God may be up to something absolutely incredible, and that he is choosing to use us. Yet sometimes some things have to happen so that we're positioned in a place, we are in perfect position to be used in a way that is absolutely unbelievable, that can only be God. It can only be explained by the power and the sovereignty of the hand of God. I want to be used like that. I want to be positioned like that, no matter what that takes, no matter what that looks like. Yeah, there may be suffering, there may be injustice, there may be things that aren't fair, there may be times that are hard, but I want to be used by God. I want to be so connected to God that no matter where I'm at in life, no matter what happens to me, no matter what's going on, that I can be confident that God is with me, that I have God's favor on my life, that I am being blessed because he is with me, simply because of his presence. That's how I want to live my life. That's how I'm choosing to live my life. And be encouraged with that. The unfortunate thing is that this chapter ends, we see the very last verse in verse 23. It says, "Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him." So Joseph said, yeah, I did this is going to happen, but remember me. And the cupbearer does not remember him. But we have to, even in that, Joseph couldn't focus and saying, he didn't even remember me. I interpreted this dream. I said this would happen. I was there for him. I took care of him, and he forgot about me. No, Joseph was not focused on that, and we can't be. We can't be. Every time our minds want to go there, we have to bring him back. We have to trust the Lord. This is in his timing. It's in his power, and it is by his love that things are done, that we are positioned, that things are moved around. May we just trust the Lord in all things. No matter what we see with our human eyes, let's choose to open our eyes and see his goodness and trust that he is up to something absolutely amazing. Be encouraged with that, guys. Thanks so much for walking this out. There is still so much more with the story of Joseph, so hang with me. Keep growing. Keep seeking the Lord. Go through that. Keep being intentional. Don't stop seeking him. Take this so for real, so seriously, guys, and just be with the Lord. Just meet with the Lord. Listen and let him speak. Let him speak to the deepest parts of your heart. Receive what he says. Receive his truth and choose to walk in that truth in such an empowering way. He is our strength. He is all we need. Let's just trust him. Thanks for walking this out with me. I hope to see you soon.